Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this month's Enterprise Messaging Product Update webinar. On the call today, we've got Eric, the product manager. We've got Ed Hanley, who I'm sure many of you know. And we also have Pam, who will be helping me out with the presentation and hopefully answering your questions behind the scenes. I can't see your Q&A at the moment, but if you do have any questions, please put them into the Q&A panel, and Pam or Ed will ask any questions as they come. Just before we kick off, I know many of you will have seen this already, but just to go through it again, we do have mid of next month our big Open Text World event is happening in Las Vegas. So if you're in the States or you want to attend, I'd strongly recommend going to see that. We also have, for those of you in the dark area, we have the efficiency tour kicking off in a few weeks at the beginning of November. That's going to be in Vienna, Düsseldorf, Essingen, which is down near Stuttgart, and Berlin. And that's just a one-day event that we're running there. And we also have the Bangalore Developer Conference, and that's not for your developers, it's for you to meet our developers. So in Bangalore, we have many of the GroupWise developers are based there. We have Filer, OES, iPrint, and other products there. And it's usually a brilliant event. It includes day-long workshops, hands-on workshops, normal sessions, 1-hour sessions that you can go to and learn about many of our products. So I strongly recommend going to that. Right, Eric, over to you now. I think I'm guessing, did I see we had a release of something yesterday? And what about 24.4? Is that coming out this month?
Yeah, Robin. So we had a release of GroupWise Disaster Recovery. It is a small minor release. There's some library updates and some other minor things, but a release nonetheless of that there. So that came out yesterday. And then we have GroupWise itself. We are working through some logistical things here, but we're hoping to get that done by the end of the month. There's a possibility that it could overrun a little bit, and again, that's just due to some things here internally. But it should be close. So GWDR is right, right on the heels here. It's coming, or not DR, sorry, excuse me, GroupWise itself. And then it should be soon. And the same thing with Retain. So we have a release of Retain that's also coming at the end of the month as well. That one should make, I believe that one should make the end of the month. So all real close. Some good releases coming. These will be LTS releases, and so they'll carry that 3-year support. So some good news there. Let's see on the front as far as what's coming up. I have shown the swim lanes there because we have a release coming up. We'll have the new updated swim lanes for the next year's forecast. I'm in the process of updating those, excuse me. So they look the same as they did last week, but some things to note is I got questions about the multi-factor bypass. We're looking at 25 for those. Same with the single sign-on. Those most of those things have the work has been done for those in the back end. We're working on the front end of that. They're coming along there. So we're hoping to get into the security event logging mid-year, and then toward the end of the year, the second half of 2025 for GroupWise, um, we'll be. I mean, at the very end of it, we're hoping to start getting into some AI assisted things with GroupWise that are pretty exciting, such as things like natural language search, message summaries, auto reply options, those sorts of things. Now they probably won't you won't see all of those. We'll be just starting to do that, but that's on the very end of our year-long forecast, and so we're hoping to begin some work in that foray.
Eric, can
Um,
I interrupt you just 1 second?
okay.
Do you have a slideshow, or are you just going from what you showed last month?
Yeah, I don't have a slideshow this time, no.
Okay, that's what I thought.
So, um, yeah, the reason why I don't want people to screenshot the thing while I'm working on it, so we'll not have it this time, and then next webinar I'll bring up an updated one. So in the let's see, so yeah, so those are the things that we're looking at for GroupWise. For retain, there we do only 2 releases per year, so there won't be a release for 25.1, but there will be for 25.2. And we'll be looking at trying to do a Teams integration. We will be looking at some solar improvements, um, and then there'll be some other items that we'll be adding in there um, uh, as they come up. I know I've got a couple of other things in the works. I don't want to put them out there yet until I have those confirmed. So, and then SMG continues to go. I believe we're doing um, we, I don't know. I don't remember when the next update is for that one, as far as um, the live, the ones that we get every 6 weeks or so, 4 to 6 weeks. But um, we'll be doing a lot of UI work over the next year for SMG as well. Usually that falls into the tracker UI or the QMS um, UI as well. So we'll be looking at doing some upgrades in there, in addition to um, the normal work that Josh typically does in there for rapid response and things like that. So, yeah. So I don't. Other than that, I don't have anything more. Is if there's any questions or anything, feel free to put them in there. I'll give you the best answer I can, and I guess back to you, Robin.
Okay, thanks. So I'm looking forward to that 24.4 release of GroupWise. That should be quite good. Anyway, let's crack on with what we were going to show you today, which we thought that as the developers are working hard on the release of all those products, we couldn't get any of them to come and talk to you today. So we thought what we'd do is just go through what's happening on the file system of GroupWise, as far as what folders are there, what files are there, and indeed some of the message flow that you've got there. Certainly I find it frustrating sometimes when doing health checks that people haven't been looking after their file system and the directory structure for things quite as well as maybe they should have done. So let's just go into that. So first of all, why you need to know this sort of information. And as I said, many people aren't aware of this at all. And so the reason really is if you know which file does what directory is got files building up in that's indicating a problem somewhere, you can work out and start troubleshooting directly on where the problem is rather than running around trying to work out where the issue is. So it's important to know these types of things. So let's just start off with having a look at what you've got on the domain file system and folder structure there. All in all, domain directories should be relatively small in size. Typically, the biggest thing in here is going to be your domain database. And so it should only be a few meg in size, really. And you'll see in a moment some things that may make that slightly different. So as far as the working directories are concerned, you've got MS local underneath every domain that you've got. And in there, we have a number of directories. So you've got GW in progress, which is the working directory for the MTA. So anything the MTA is doing really is going in there. We have the GWVS scan, which is the third-party antivirus scanning directory, which Guava used to do. I don't think SMG does anymore, but there are API hooks on the MTA that can do antivirus. Then we've got the message log directory. And this logs every single message that's being sent through the MTA. And you can track those messages. Let me show you on that. I've got, where's my GroupWise system? So if I take this message here, you've got on properties, I'm sure you've noticed, you've got this ID here, which is your message ID. And we'll come across the significance of that 166 later on. But that's when we discuss that towards the end of the session. That's where you get that ID from. If I just copy that, then I can pop that into do a with my message tracking report that you've got on monitor. I can just put that in and run the report, and I can see here exactly, it's gone down to post office 2, post office 3, and got to domains whatever, indeed when it got down to the GUIA. I get very frustrated sometimes when people say, it's so annoying you can't track a message through the system. You can. You've got it, all that information there at your fingertips at no additional cost or anything there. Anyway, just one thing on the message logs. You obviously need to have that enabled. That's enabled on the MTA. And don't please disable the cleanup of that after X number of days. I go into places and there may be 50, 60 gig worth of logs. You look at it and then logged every single message since 1994 or whatever. And if you're not using it, and even if you are using it, you don't need it after a few months. So make sure you clear that down. We have the message hold directory. So this is where messages get put if they can't be delivered because the destination is unreachable. So, and thing to think about here is we don't do single message store here. So if I'm sending a message to 10 domains and they're all down, then there's going to be 10 copies of that message in there, which can cause problems, as I found out on one occasion when I was doing some consultancy somewhere, and I did made some change to the system, which did a reset on all the MTAs. And just at that point, somebody was sending a 10 gig, and yes, 10 gig email through the system, and it went and used up all the disk space on the system because there were multiple domains that it was queuing for. Anyway, just bear in mind that. We have the MTA conversion directory, and hopefully you won't have to use this. That's for if you've got domains that are at significantly earlier version than 24 dot whatever, but that would be where those messages go through. Then we've got various queues for the MTA. So an input queue and an output queue. Just as a aside here on namings, MS, the MTA used to be called message server. So that's why you've got MS in there. WP is from WordPerfect because GroupWise was originally a WordPerfect product, and we haven't renamed the directories there. And then CS is connection server, which again is back in the old DOS days was what the MTA was called in those days, was connection server. So just a little bit of history for you there. So then we've got, and the thing about these two directories here is their in and out is relevant to the MTA. So inbound to the MTA, outbound from the MTA. Then we've got WP Gate, which these days you typically only have one directory under, which is the GUIA. Again, many years ago, we had, I don't know, 20 or so different gateways, and you'd see the loads of subdirectories there. But we really only have the GUIA these days. And then a couple of other directories which aren't used that still get created there. So while we're early on here, I thought we'd just mention about many of those directories, the Q directories and the whole directories and so on, have priority queues in them, numbered 0 to 7. So 8 priority queues there. And just so you're aware, things like live interactive requests, so that's going to be busy searches, will go through on 0. You've got someone waiting for a result to come back. You need to get it through the system quickly. One is for other interactive requests. So this is going to be your remote requests for GroupWise client coming in there. Then we get into our normal message queues. So we've got high priority messages. And then on the odd numbers coming back here, you've got the status messages. So the high priority status messages, then normal priority messages, normal status, low priority messages, and low priority status messages. So most messages you're going to get coming through with the queue is going to be in queue number 5, because almost every message is sent as a normal priority message. So that would go through on 4. But remember, you've then got status messages coming back. So you've got delivered status, you've got open status, you've got deleted status if you've got additional tracking on, purge status, you can see they've replied to it, you can see they've downloaded it, and so on. So that's where most of your messages are going to be coming through on Q5. There's some files obviously in the domain directory. We've got MTA startup files that depending, and you can obviously specify where these are if you don't want them there. Just on the startup file, I'm sure many of us have come across this. try to avoid putting settings in there that can be put in the database. The number of times I've made a change in the database to an MTA and that's taken and everything's working fine, you then do a restart and it goes back to the original setting because the startup file overrides what's in the database. So only put stuff in the startup file that isn't in the administration console. You've got dictionary files, so with each version of GroupWise, there's schema changes and so on, and these are essentially the schema files for the database there. Some other things in there with MTA name, just has the name of the domain in, which can be quite important sometimes. I have in the past rebuilt the wrong domain to the wrong place and cause problems, whereas if you check first on the MTA name, can help avoid that question there, that issue there. Then, of course, you've got the main domain database file, and as far as something like the primary domain database, from that one file, you could rebuild the whole system, GroupWise system, albeit not with any mail in there, but the infrastructure of post offices, domains, GUIAs, and so on can be rebuilt from that one file. There are a couple of minor files there, just flags that tell you that on Linux that locking is in place and what user is authorized to run that MTA. And then just so you're aware, in the WPCS out, there's a couple of directories there, one for administrative messages, and then for the CSS one is deals with changes to its own configuration, the domain, the MTA. They go through there. So any questions, Pam or Ed?
No, actually, one you might know is from Elliot this morning. He has a customer that's been using Antidote for French grammar checking inside GroupWise, but Antidote no longer supports GroupWise. Do you know of an alternative by any chance?
No. I would have thought, I don't know how it hooks in, but if it's using the standard APIs, then they won't have changed. So it should still continue to work, even if it's not supported.
Okay.
Okay.
That's all
right.
there is so far.
Oh, okay. So let's just have a look at the post office side of things and what we've got there. And obviously the post office is going to be quite a bit larger than the domain. As I said, the domain normally is just a little bit bigger than the domain database, so tends to be pretty small, whereas the post office is going to be quite a bit bigger because it's got all your attachments in and all your user messages and so on. So as far as the post office directories are concerned, we have the document management directory, which isn't really used that much at the moment, though is still in the product. And you can still use it if you wish. I won't go into the directory structure under there for different libraries and so on, but that is useful to know and look up. If you look it up in the documentation, it can be quite useful for troubleshooting if you've got document management issues. Off files is where binary large objects go, or blobs, and we'll explain what they are later on. You've got the off MSG directory, which is where the message databases are. And we have 255 message databases. and they're stored in that directory. We've got a temporary directory, and then off user is where our user databases are. So every user on the post office has a database that's assigned to them there. We have a working directory, and then as far as the MTA is concerned, the inbound queue for the MTA and the outbound queue for the MTA. So the outbound queue, for instance, is going to be the MTA putting messages in there that need to be processed by the POA. And then the inbound queue is for messages that are going up to the MTA. And that those are used in a number of occasions. Sometimes it may not be used if you're doing things like MTP between the POA and the MTA. And then we've got a temp directory as well. So again, in the post office directory, we have a few things there. We've got the database dictionary files again for the post office databases. So the post office database itself is called wphost.db, but you may see a dictionary file in there called gwpo.dc, a dictionary file there, which is for, I think, GroupWise 12 post offices if you have to do a rebuild of that there. But hopefully none of you are running that older version of GroupWise. We've got the startup file for the post office. Again, same things there about try to avoid putting stuff in there. And then we've got a very important database called NGW Guard database, which is the Guardian database, which really is a sort of database of database type things. And it's a very important database in the system. We do have a backup of it. You'll see in there called with a .fbk extension, and we also have a .rfl extension with GWGuard, which is the roll forward log. So if the database gets corrupted from the FBK and the RFL, we can get back to where we should be. And just so you're aware, because it is so important, we do have a second backup of it as well, buried in the directory structure. So if everything goes wrong, we can use that secondary backup as well. So just take care of that database is what I'm trying to get across here. We also have a database for controlling GW checks and what is being run there. And then again, we've got the same two files that we have on the MTA for cross-protocol locks and which Linux user is authorized to run the agents there. So there are some other files that are around. We've got ngw defer or DFR database. That's put in the off MSG directory, and that just contains the messages that have been deferred delivery, and that is on the destination post office of the user, not on the user that sent it. So that's stored there. We also, you may see a file wprof50.db, which is the system address book for remote users. I assume it's cached users as well. They use the same system there. So you've got that there, and that gets rebuilt based on your maintenance tasks that you've got set on the post office. Under off user, we do have an index directory. That's where your quick finder index is. Please do not disable quick finder. One sure way to go and slow things down tremendously is if you've disabled quick finder. And there are a couple of different file types that you find in that directory. There's a IDX file, which is the index file that you're searching on, you can search on. And then as new messages come in, INC or incremental files are created with the changes, which then periodically get added to the main IDX files. And then they stay around for a few days and get cleaned up from the system. So looking in that directory, you should only see IDX and INC files there. And then as far as the outbound directory from the MTA, the WPCS out environment, we've got a few directories under that. There's the CHK directory. There's the AD, which deals with GW check messages. You've got ADS, which are administrative messages coming in, and OFS, which is where most of the traffic is going to go, which is your incoming messages. Oh, something I forgot to mention before that I did have on one of the slides you may have noticed is that many of these queue directories do have a problem directory in. So do go and look in that problem directory. And sometimes, you know, I go places and there are thousands of messages there. You know, again, you're busy backing up all those messages. They've never been delivered. There was some problem. Make sure you clear that down. You can just go and dump them back into a queue, and it can be any of the queues. You can move messages from one queue to another if you wanted to there. But typically I wouldn't, because somebody receiving a message that was sent 5 years ago may confuse them a little. So do check problem directories and clear them down, please. So let's just go through message storage so you understand how that works. As we said, every user does have their own user database, and that's called user XYZ, a 3-letter alphanumeric ID, and each user has a unique ID per post office. Yeah, and so you may work out that that's about 40,000, bit more different permutations of that there. So that's the maximum number of users that you can have on a post office. And if any of you put 40,000 users on a post office, I would be very concerned. Please don't do that. But that is unique per post office, not unique per system. You know, we do have systems that are well more above that number of users there. I think the biggest one I worked on was, what, 115,000 users production system. So in that database, it contains all your personal settings, so things like rules, your folder structure, and so on, that are unique to you. And it has pointers to messages that are in the message database. And so every message that comes in, a pointer, it gets added to the message database, and a pointer is put in your user database to that message. Just something to bear in mind in that off user directory, you may see some databases called PU and a number or an ID after that. Those are prime user databases and are for shared items. So that's shared folders, shared address books, shared calendars are all stored in that database. So that is where someone on a different post office has shared something with someone on the post office you're looking at. It will create a PU database locally on that post office for that information. As far as the message database is concerned, we have 255 message databases, which are similarly called MSG XXX, a three-letter number there, and then db.db, and they contain anything over 2K. Sorry, anything under they contain anything under 2K there. Anything over 2K, like the message body, the recipient lists, and attachments, not just attachments. Many people think it's just attachments that are stored as blobs, but in fact, it's if you've done written a essay for your message body that's over 2K, that will go as a blob. Or recipient list, you've put 5,000 recipients on this email, that will go as a blob as well. But anything less than that, as far as the message body and so on is concerned, is going to be stored in that message database. Something to bear in mind is that all messages that are sent from a specific user are placed in the same message database. So remember when I was looking at that message ID earlier, we had the 166 in the middle. That is my database for my messages. And so they'll always be put in that database. And on another post office, they will be put in that database as well. Don't know if I've got, can I just show you that quickly? So here, if I go and look at my post office here, go and look at off MSG, I've got various those message databases there. If we sort by size, the biggest one is that 166 database, because this is a test system. I'm the one sending all the messages generally. So that's why that's so big, is because every message I send is going into that database.
Robin.
And then, yep.
Just another little piece of information here. The user xxx.db is specific to each user in the post office. The message xxx.db is not. There are multiple users in each message database.
Yeah, because you've only got 255 message databases, but you could have 40,000 users on the post office. they get shared. So yeah, multiple users use the same message database. Also, something just to bear in mind, the maximum size of the database file is 4 gigabytes. I'm not aware of anyone that's ever exceeded that. Are you, Pam or Ed?
I don't.
Yeah. So just be aware that there is a maximum size. Hopefully, if you do have a massive post office of 10 terabytes total size or whatever, you're thinking about putting in some sort of long-term archiving solution like Retain or whatever to take some of that load off the post office. And then you've got everything over 2K, which, as we said, with the body, recipient list and attachments, gets stored as a blob binary large object, and that's in off files. They're stored in a compressed format. So if I send a 10 meg Word document, it may get stored as a 5 meg file there, and it is encrypted as well. So the administrator can't go looking at those files and being able to just open them up on the file system, see what you've been sending. And so each message database for the relevant part will point to the off files directory for that. And obviously the vast majority of your data is going to be in the off files directory, all your attachments. And so if you're moving a post office from one place to another, typically I'd say do it in a 2-pass format, and with a first pass when users are online, where you copy 98% of the storage across. That's not going to change. And then you can take the users offline, then move the last 5% or whatever of data that's changed since you did the initial copy. That way you can minimize your downtime for that sort of thing. So let's just go through message flow of the system, and there are lots of different message flows that are that may happen. So this is just one possible way things might work. So if I've got a user that sends a message, the post office agent is going to pop that into the off files for the blobs, go and update off MSG to point at those files, and then update each off user database, including the senders. So if it's to people on the same post office, they will get it, and obviously the sender will get it in their mailbox as well. And the message may well get queued up into one of those inbound MTA queues. That will then send it to the domain, where the domain will put it in the in progress queue. If it's using file-based rather than IP-based messaging, then it will use the WPCS in and out. And obviously, if it can't get to the destination, it will put it in the hold queue here. That will then get moved to the next domain down the link, and then into in progress there, and then finally to the destination post office. So once the destination post office has that, and the message gets put in the WPCS out OFS directory, and then the post office will pick it up from there and deliver it. So same as before, put it in off files, update off MSG with pointers to that, and then update all the recipients' mailboxes to point to that message there. So fairly straightforward. And then, of course, we've got the same going back as far as status message is concerned. It will go through the same system to the destination, and then at that point it will just update the off MSG to indicate that that's been updated, that's been delivered, that message. And of course the user gets that information there. So Pam, any questions?
Oh, I've got
No?
them all handled.
Okay, great. So let's move on to the GUIA as well. So as I said, in the old days, we had about 20 different gateways available, but nowadays we only have the GUIA, and so that's the only one we need to worry about. As far as the directory structure there is concerned, we have a working directory. And in the good old days, we used to have a switch on the GUIA where you could specify which working directory to use. So you could have multiple GUIAs running against the same queue system. But I don't think that we support that anymore, unfortunately. A good way of doing high availability. We have directory for deferred delivery messages. So this is different to messages that can't be delivered. These are messages that I've sent saying deliver, send this at midnight or whatever. It's a press release that needs to go out at midnight, and that's where it's going to sit until it's time to go. We have delivery status notification messages. A directory there, character mappings there as well. You shouldn't really need to worry about touching those. We do have the delayed delivery message, the GW hold. So this is when Microsoft.com is down, a message can't be delivered, it will be put in there and stored there, and then go through that cycle of 20 minutes and then 1 hour to try redelivery. Sorry, Pam.
It's okay. I do have a question for you that came up that I'm not sure about because I haven't dealt with it for a really long time. What happens?
You think I do know? I have.
Oh, well, you know. What happens if a third-party virus scanner deletes a message in the scan directory?
Or clears it down. As I said, I think that's a bit of a moot point because I don't think there's anything that uses that.
SMG doesn't, but I don't know if there are any other third-party scanners that do. I'm not aware of any.
I think it was just Guava did it in the old days. But yeah, I would imagine that somebody, I'm guessing somebody would get notified that there was a virus found in that case. But to me, it's a bit of a moot point because it won't happen these days.
And then we always tell customers not to have their server-based antivirus engine scanning a GroupWise post office file structure because they'll get false positives.
Yeah. Oh, are we talking about two different things here?
I'm just talking about AV engines where they might.
In general, well, it's a waste of time because I refer you to my previous statement where I said everything was encrypted. So you're not going to be able to find anything there at all. It's a waste of time doing the scan of the file system there. Anyway, moving on, we've got a problem directory, and again, a number of times I'm doing a health check and there are gigs and gigs of messages in the problem directory that for whatever reason have got a problem. Yeah, clear it out, please. And then we've got three important directories that are used for the actual message sending and receiving. So you've got messages that are coming in from the outside world. The send directory is outbound messages that you're sending out of the system, and then results of that sending go into the result queue there. And then, of course, we've got the same WPCS in and out for the MTA to send, be able to communicate and put messages down there. So let's just have a look at message flow for outbound messages. So the MTA receives a message, it will put it into WPCS out. So in this instance, we're talking about file-based messaging. The GUIA picks that up, converts it from a GroupWise message into a SMTP message, which it will then put in the send directory. We then have a second component to the GUIA, which most people aren't aware that we have, which is the SMTP daemon. So this is the bit that talks to the outside world and sends and receives messages. So that will then pick up that message from the send queue and send that off to the outside world. And then it will get information back, or it will generate its own transferred message, which it puts into the results queue. The GUIA picks that up, changes that really into a status message and puts that into WPCS in, which then goes off to the outside world. As far as inbound messages are concerned, very similar. A message comes into the system, the daemon picks it up, puts it into the receive directory, and from there the GUIA picks it up, converts it into a GroupWise message, puts it into the WPCS in directory, which then goes to the MTA and out into the GroupWise system and gets delivered. So fairly straightforward bits and pieces there as far as that's concerned. So we've got a few files in the GUIA directory. There's the GroupWise access control database. That's where all your settings of this user can receive messages from opentext.com, but can't receive them from netiq.com, and so on. This user can use POP and what have you. Great thing about that database is if you making it very complicated, very specific with lots of settings in that may take you a few hours to set up for the relevant users or groups. What you can do is just copy that database from the GUIA that you created it for to, if you've got multiple GUIAs in your system, you can just copy it into those GUIAs directories, and they will get those settings that you have set on the first one. So very easy to move those settings around if you wanted to. GroupWise auth, gwauth.cfg is your host authentication file. So if you have to authenticate to a destination SMTP server, that's where you put in your credentials and stuff for that system that you're connecting to. You then have the startup switches, MIME type. If you want to map those, you can change the MIME warning that you get, though typically no one does. You don't need to worry about that. Root CFG is, I find I have to use that quite often. That's an override for how messages are going to go. So for instance, if I've got you know, a relay host outside you know, message labs or something that I'm bouncing messages off, but I'm sending a message to the finance system, which is internal. I don't really want to go all the way out and come back in. I can just do a routing override and say anything that's going to that domain goes that way there. Or if what did I have? Oh yeah, there was a government organization that needed to anything that was going to a government site had to go through the secure government network. So in that case, we just put in anything that was going to one of the secure sites got routed to this relay rather than the standard relay. But you get the idea, you've got that. There's some other bits and pieces in there for status messages, and I don't know if we still do block TXT. Do we still do that, Pam, Ed?
I don't think so.
But I think it's still in there. That file.
It is still in
list
there,
of
but
blocked
I don't
internet
think we
sites.
use it.
It's still valid. Yeah.
People don't use it these days, but yeah, I think you can set it if you wanted to. There, which is just you can block IP addresses there if you wanted to. So something I wanted to just mention is the third-party directory on the GUIA. So remember that we have the GUIA, we've got that SMTP daemon that's sending and receiving the messages. They're both looking at the same, typically looking at the same directory structure. So the GUIA puts a message in the send queue and the daemon picks it up and sends it. But what we can do, and let me just show you where this is set, because this comes up occasionally. So, where's Internet Agent? GUIA on server directories. I've got this advanced settings there. So what I can do there is specify a different directory that the daemon is looking at. So what happens then let's just go and have a look here at the so here I've got those send result receive directories here, which are where the GUI is putting messages. And if you look here in third, I've got send result receive in here as well. So I've got messages, and something's been sending me messages quite a bit. Sorry. Oh, that's from GroupWise Monitor giving me some alert. But they're just going to sit there until I do something with them. And so I can virus scan them here. I can add text to it. I can add additional recipients to it or whatever. And then I just move the message across. So let's just show you if I just do a copy of that message, the one that I was expecting to see in there. And there you see that's just been delivered. Message from Filer telling me I can access a file there. So you can see we've got that bit there that we can do stuff and process those messages. So for instance, this is just a little Python script where I'm just moving files from one place to another. And in this case, what was I doing? Changing the MIME type within the message, because I think somebody was having problems with IMG or messages run. They need to go to JPEG. Something you may notice here is that I'm saying don't touch anything that's got a file name beginning with X. If you see any files in the system with a X at the beginning of them, it means a process is processing them at that point in time. So don't touch them. You know, the MTA is picking it up, is writing it or something like that. If you see a file in there with X at the beginning in one of the queues that is 6 months old, it's not going to get processed. Delete it. Okay. So that's very useful tool for intercepting inbound messages to into your system if you wanted to do something like put a external tag on the subject line, so people know that it's come from external there. So Pam, I think we're finished. Any questions?
There are not any that are hanging out. I would like to make a bit of an announcement, if I may.
Yes, of course.
So,
Please do.
So this is after this webinar, I only have 2 more to do. I'm retiring on the 31st of December, and Brett Delaney will be taking over my duties as the answer man behind the scenes. And it's been a pleasure working with all of you over the 30 years I've been here, but I'm here for 2 more webinars.
I don't know what we're going to do without you, Pam.
I will miss you guys.
Yeah,
Well, we'll miss you
congratulations on
too
your
very
retirement.
much. So. Yeah, it's going to be a sad day. That when
I'm looking forward to it.
oh, I'm sure you are. You'll have a wonderful time. I think, and I've got a few more years to go yet before I'm treading that same path. But we wish you all the best for the future there.
Yeah. And like I said, I am going to miss working with all of you, both internally and externally. It's been a great 30 years.
Well, I've enjoyed it as well. And it's been great working with you.
Yes, same here.
Okay, I think we're bang on the hour now.
We
are. Let's wrap this up for this month. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending. I hope you found it useful, and hopefully you learned something. And I wasn't teaching you to something that you knew already. So I did notice Dietmar and Tim out there, so maybe I have been teaching them things they know already, and I'm sure many of you others out there will have known much of what I was talking about. Anyway, we'll see you next month. I won't actually be on that call. I'm going to be in Germany doing the tour there. So I think Mike or Ed will be looking after you then. But I'll see you then. Goodbye.
Yep, goodbye.